seems that it is going to be on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being extremely nervous and 10 being highly confident. How are you feeling right now about the merge?
I am 10, highly confident. We think it's going to be probably nothing, and probably nothing is a playful phrase in our ecosystem that indicates a bit sarcastically that we think it'll be enormously impactful, but it'll also be very likely nothing, in the sense that there's no disruption that's going to be experienced by end users. There's virtually no disruption that's being experienced by software developers. It'll be as smooth as if your iPhone or your laptop has upgraded its operating system automatically overnight.
Okay.
In terms of impact in the history of our ecosystem, there have been two major events so far. The advent of Bitcoin and the development of Ethereum, a much more programmable and expressive blockchain technology. This slots in as number 3, in my opinion. There's been so much testing that the merge itself is overwhelmingly likely to be very smooth, but we haven't tested it in the context of the whole big ecosystem, which is becoming an economy in its own right. And so there are lots of little projects that maybe read from the blockchain or depend on it in some ways. It's possible that some of those little projects haven't upgraded what they need to upgrade in order for their own smooth transition, but all the major services that depend on the blockchain have already done the work.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And you know I come back with that video just to make you think. And we have Joe Lubin on the Ethereum merge. Says that everything is going to go smoothly. But we all want to know in the long run, is it all going to work? There is a whole ecosystem that relies on Ethereum. Now, what's also very important, guys, we have proof of work. And Lubin stated that the amount of Ethereum that's produced goes down 90%. And if anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, when it was on proof of work, it was about 13,000 that had to be produced per day in order to pay the miners. Now it drops all the way down to 1,600 in order to pay the stakers. So if anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the way it goes. So now we see that the actual supply is going to be very important, because this gives the whales even more control over this ecosystem. So we're definitely going to have to sit back and watch this play out. And we know Ethereum is a big part of the NWO's plan. We know JP Morgan has his hands all over Ethereum. If you watch my must-watch videos, JP Morgan on blockchain, we knew it from the beginning. But we also have Gary Gensler speaking of the monopoly. And the only thing you have to do is go to the repo and you see these same big banks. And we know the NWO looks for the brightest. And they fund all these top universities. So therefore, they can pick the brightest ones. And we know technology can be used for good or evil. And the only thing they have to do, because they're just printing the money, is pay these inventors, these creators. Remember, technology can be used for good or evil. Yes, majority of these kids are creating things to solve problems, thinking the good. But then we know what the NWO comes in and do. They monopolize it and turn it to evil. We've seen it time and time again. And we have Brad Garlinghouse on JP Morgan. And we know Jamie Dimon has talked down Bitcoin on several occasions, while they're buying low and selling high. But guys, we know the apocalypse of crypto is definitely right around the corner. With the Fed shrinking liquidity and raising rates, only 0.5% of these cryptos will be left. And remember, the crypto teacher told you, because he knows. When it comes to the New World Order, it's all planned out. You have a wonderful day.
Of Ether staked in the beacon chain. The merge is essentially moving the consensus chain and the execution chain together into a single system. So there's already a huge amount of Ether staked, and we anticipate that with the reduction in this overhanging uncertainty, once the merge is complete, that many more actors, including institutions, financial institutions, will take that as a go sign that the coast is clear and that they can treat Ether, a yielding asset, as something that they want to participate in as a decorrelated or uncorrelated asset, and an infrastructure that they already consider potentially systemically important in the future and need to gain expertise in. And so we've spoken to many financial institutions that are ready to dive. The amount of Ether that will be issued by the protocol will be reduced by about 90%. And further, it won't actually be movable off the consensus chain for a while. We implemented a minimum viable merge fork so that we could just ensure that we get everything right. And so we've delayed some other pieces to subsequent forks. And so it'll be a bunch of months before any of the newly issued Ether is able to leave the addresses that it'll be in. And so that's going to be very interesting for supply-demand dynamics, where the supply of new Ether is essentially zero for quite a while. The next major upgrade will add what's called data availability, guaranteed data availability shards. And so we've seen the Ethereum network split up into a security module, an execution module, and soon a data availability module. The execution module has already brought tremendous scalability in the form of these layer 2 rollups that run transactions above the chain, but with the full security guarantee of the security layer. And then adding this third module, data availability, will enable these layer 2 rollups to be bigger, faster, and more plentiful. Is under scrutiny by regulators, and since the start of the advent of our ecosystem, we've been progressively decentralizing what we do. We couldn't start out massively decentralized, and that is the goal. And every time that hackers or attackers within the rules in our ecosystem to try to exploit certain systems for monetary gain, or regulators identify weaknesses, and some of those weaknesses are in the form of centralization in our technology, we take that as a teaching signal, and that's where we focus next on making things rigorously, maximally decentralized. And so
central monopolist with another central monopolist, a lot of commercial banks aren't terribly excited about that. Maybe you're going to have to give some ownership. Maybe you'll have to give 50% of your ownership to the 20 banks that are now, part of this. I mean, there are other ways to build incentive systems. Maybe you put a native token in there, and you give them the native token. So there may be other incentive ways to beat the current monopolist. But I, having been around commercial banks for a long time, they really are looking for ways to replace their aggregators in their back office, whether it's clearing, settlement, exchanges, credit agencies. But they are deeply understanding, because they are pretty ambitious and very good at making money as well. They deeply understand that every idea that's pitched to them is somebody who currently is small but wants to get big and gain market power. So they're also always thinking about how to ensure that there's a check to slow down your startup from gaining market power 5, 10, and 15 years from now. They don't want you to be the next clearinghouse like the Chicago Mercantile Exchange or Intercontinental Exchange. They don't want you to be the next central node of market power. So you might share some of that with them, or you might find an incentive system.
When we talk about Jamie Dimon, we first have to recognize where he sits. He sits at the top of the global financial infrastructure. There are a few banks, of which JPM is certainly one, that make billions and billions of dollars of profit by virtue of that perch. 99.9% of banks don't make money in this ecosystem in terms of cross-border payments. Jamie Dimon makes a technical term of a ton of money by sitting there. So when I hear Jamie Dimon saying it's a fraud, I think to myself, well, of course he's going to say that. He's talking. I mean, and by the way, there's also people who conspiratorially he's trying to talk down the price of Bitcoin so JPM can buy it. Like the idea that JP Morgan isn't actively working in the blockchain and Bitcoin space is not true. Frankly, I don't mind sharing. There are about 15 senior JP Morgan people at Ripple's offices this afternoon. Now, unless JP Morgan's going to fire them.
Does JP Dimon know that?
Apparently not. Anyway, so look, that's my thought on the whole JP Dimon thing. I think what we have to remind ourselves is this has to come back to utility. What problem is the digital asset solving? If it's solving a real problem and it's creating value by solving that problem, then there will be value in the token. I think what's risky is there's a lot of these things, as Juan was saying, that I cannot explain why you need a token. I can't explain what the token does. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think, unfortunately, I think that percentage, particularly in the recent ICO wave, I think that percentage is a very high percentage. I think there is going to be carnage to be had from that. And I think we're
going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
This effort. And China has big plans for this. They intend to seed their digital yuan into the global environment by giving it away to visitors at next winter's Olympics. When they arrive at the airport, they're going to get yuan digital wallets. They're going to receive digital yuan. They're going to use it throughout their visits to Beijing, and then they're going to take it back to their home countries. They see this as a huge advantage. Why? Because who controls the underlying protocols, who controls the underlying standards of the future of money will control the future of money.
Most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs. And guys, you know I truly believe in this. When you look at the New World Order, they're the storytellers. And that's the reason why I wrote my New World Order book. But guys, now it's time to change the current generation. And I wrote 3 kids books. You know I love the Trinity because I understand the power that's in it. So I have 3 books. We have an opportunity to change the generation, to educate, not just me, but I want to show you that I take action on a daily basis. And I want you to take action on a daily basis. Whether it's your job, whether it's in your community, we have an opportunity right now to educate the masses. I posted this on my Twitter account. Please share, but this is a short clip of the 3 books. There's going to be a clothing line and action figures. Please get these books for your kids, nephews, cousins, friends. So therefore, we can start the re-education now. Because as we see, the 4th Industrial Revolution foundation is definitely here. Robots, algorithms, drones, taking humanity out the picture. We have to re-educate. But let's get into the video.
Part 1. King Joshua and Drama Team save the village. Part 2. King Joshua and Drama Team save New York from COVID Stories 3. Part 3. King Joshua and Drama Team goes to China.
It's mandatory to get part 1, part 2, and part 3 of this series. It's time to re-educate Generation Z.